In this video, you're getting a bit of a change of scene. I'm not in my normal room that I do my exercises from. I'm in a different part of the house, and that is because I have found a weird and wonderful angle in my house that I like to stretch in. So one of the biggest things that I'm trying to get across with my clients, and you, if you are not a client but you are watching one of my videos on my social media, is that the only marker that you need to understand whether or not something is right for you to do is whether or not it feels right for you to do. So it might sound silly, but the amount of times that I get asked, is this thing helping me? Or is this thing doing something that will make me take a step back? And my answer is always, how do you feel? And if something feels right, it's probably good for you. And the reason that I want to highlight that is that's the case when you're doing your menu and the exercises that I might prescribe for you. But it's also the case when it comes to listening to what it is that your body is asking you to do. So do you find yourself very drawn to wanting to stretch out the backs of your legs? Do you find yourself very drawn to wanting to mobilize your shoulder blades? It's going to be different for everybody, just depending on where you're stiff and what's going on. But listen to that, because that's your body's intuition telling you what part of your body you might need to start moving differently. And for me, when I follow my body's intuition, which is what I'm always constantly trying to do, it leads me to develop, and I don't mean that in a way of I'm the only person in the world that's only done this thing, but develop exercises that aren't on my software prescribed by the Egoscue method, which is the sort of movement method that I follow the principles of as an affiliate. My cat's about to jump up. Thank you, Patsy. That's not very helpful. But yeah, that's very much the principles of what I do. So I'm constantly trying to find exercises and positions that feel really good for me to do. And that's what I'm going to walk you through today. A random thing, I came up with it 2 days ago. I keep on doing it and it feels amazing. So for me personally, I get tightness in my kind of right lower back area. So at the bottom of my rib cage down to my sacrum. It's mainly around the rib cage that my tightness presents itself, but sometimes it kind of feeds down slightly more. I know, just because I know my body and what's going on, that it is due to my right side of my pelvis not moving very well, and that the hip flexor is super tight. So I feel it up by the rib cage at the back, but it's actually my tight hip that is causing that kind of sensation that I feel. This exercise is following what my body wants more of, which is lateral spinal flexion. So lateral spinal flexion is this like sideways tilt to the side. And when I tilt like this through my rib cage, it gets a big old stretch through that hip, probably other muscles like my quadratus lumborum and things like that in that lower back area. And it feels great. So we're going to do that. Feel free to try. This is not an exercise that will necessarily work for you, but give it a go if you can find a weird setup. So I was standing doing some exercises here against the wall the other day watching TV. My TV's over there. And I got myself into a triangle position, which is an exercise that I really love for my posture. So for triangle, we've got our bottom against the wall. So both butt cheeks, left and right, are flat against the wall. And I like to call these guys here your pelvic headlamps. So where the kind of bony bits of your pelvis are here, you want them to stay facing straight ahead. They should not turn as you turn your upper body. So if they start turning, that's your pelvis twisting, not your hips rotating. So your pelvis is this structure here. The hips are the joints that connect the femur to the pelvis, and that is basically a rotation movement at the front of the hips here, which is very hard for lots of people to do. So hip rotation is very often the kind of underlying dysfunction that somebody might have in their body. So this is tackling that, as well as the added extra that I'm going to show you that works for me. So for triangle, bottom is at wall, left and right butt cheeks even, pelvic headlamps straight ahead. My back foot is slightly pigeon-toed, so make sure that those toes aren't facing in that direction. The toes are slightly closer to the other foot than your heel is. That ankle stays at the wall. This foot runs parallel to the wall, but is about 3 or 4 inches away. you're making sure that your weight distribution feels even through both of your feet, so you're not choosing one foot over the other, and you've got as much weight in your big toe as you do in the outside edge of the foot and in the back of the foot as well. You're squeezing your quads, contracting your quads, your thigh muscles, to lift the kneecaps. And at the same time, you're going to actively externally rotate this front leg. So for me, I'm using my left glute, squeezing my left glute to rotate the femur within the hip socket without moving the pelvis. So if your butt cheek is coming across the wall, this is telling you that you lack rotation in this hip here. Maybe other things as well, but probably that you cannot rotate this hip here. If you're being pulled forward, that is tension through the hip, not allowing you to have that pelvis flat against the wall, which is what we want, and that's going to create the rotation within the hip socket. So, even weight distribution through the feet, quads are locked on, pelvis stays at wall, using quads and glute on that left leg to crank the femur externally so that the kneecap tracks in the same direction as your toes and the wall, keeping everything here the same. Then what I did is I grabbed my banister, and sorry you can't see my hand, but I'm going to guess you're going to be able to know what's going on. Everything else stays the same. Focus on the weight distribution through the feet. Focus on the squeezing of your quads. Bottom stays at wall. Hip keeps on rotating. And I put my hands on my radiator like this, peeling back through my right hip because the right hip wants to come away. Peeling back, and this gives me a lovely stretch up the right hand side of my body. And then as my body kind of loosened up into it more, I started working my way further down, holding onto the banister as I go, like that. So you can see as I'm moving, can you see here that I'm moving my upper body relative to a completely fixed lower body? As I move my upper body forwards, I'm not shifting my pelvis away. As I move my upper body forwards, I'm not changing my foot position or what my knee is doing. Everything here is locked into place. The pelvis stays still, and I reach the arms to the side. By locking everything in place and keeping the pelvis still, this is going to create that kind of stretch up the side of my torso. If the pelvis moves backwards, it's losing some of the positioning that we were doing before, and it feels much easier. There's no stretch when I do that, but when I keep the pelvis still like this, and actually move my upper body, there's a really nice big stretch in that bit of my back that feels nice and tight. So I was just holding this for about 30 seconds, keeping the quads tight and really trying to rotate my left hip, which I believe in my body is my primary underlying dysfunction. I think there's some other things going on as well, but I think it's a lack of rotation in my left hip that's the biggest thing that's going on with me. Walking my hands down as time went on. I can only really do it on this side, but for me that doesn't matter too much just because this is the side that feels tight and feels like it needs it. Obviously I can't really give you a way of setting this up. It's a question of looking for what you have at home. But my message with this video is not to say you must do this exercise to help with the tightness in the side of your body, but it's about looking at your house and when you're watching TV, not just being sat on a sofa, slumped over in the position that you're in for X amount of hours during the day and not correct for a functional human body. We want to try and keep you moving as often as possible. I watch TV, I relax in the evenings, but whilst I'm relaxing, I'm not just sat in a chair. So what I want you to take away from this is, firstly, try and mix up your position when you're relaxing in the evenings and stuff like that. Follow your body's intuition as to what it wants. So if you feel tight in the side of your back, like I do, figure out how you feel best to get that stretch. Is it about leaning forwards? Is it about bending backwards? Is it about moving to the side? Is it about rotating? Find the angle or angles that work for you and try and put yourself into positions that target these areas that feel tight, and just breathe into them and see what happens. Can you release tension? And my third point from this video is look around what you have at home. So yeah, I was just doing other exercises, standing at the wall, things that I do, things like this, bench, blah, blah, blah. And I looked at the banister and I thought, oh, you know what? My body loves that lateral tilt. Maybe if I stretch my arms, it's going to give me a really nice big stretch. And it did. Take that attitude, random video. Don't know how helpful that is, but I hope you enjoyed. Bye.